We're here today with dear Cheryl
Angel
from the Lakota.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have a full name to
Yes,
share?
Cheryl Angel.
Cheryl Angel.
Yes.
Yeah. That's appropriate.
Huh? Yeah, my dad gave it to me.
Yeah.
But what I know about peace in my upbringing, the peace that I found was never inside the home. It was always outside. And believe it or not, I would go to a cemetery because it had these monuments that you could, like steps, some of them were steps and some of them looked like houses. And I would actually climb up on, like, because I was pretty young, probably about between 5 and 6, when I actively wanted to sit outside rather than sit inside. And it was because I was looking for peace. And the sun would, you know, the sun, just feeling the sun on my skin and my face made me feel well and healthy. And laying down on the grass and looking up at the sky and seeing the clouds go by took any anxiety or worry away from me. And the sound of like rumbling thunder, that always was like, okay, it's a warning, wherever you're at, you need to get home because lightning will come and the rain will come down hard. But if I want to find peace, it's usually in silence. And what I hear in my silence, after listening to everything I can possibly hear outside, takes maybe 2 or 3 minutes. And then inside my own interior, inside, there's this vibration that I feel and that I literally hear inside my head. And it was incredible to me that was the sound of peace. But it was, and it would come naturally. And sometimes when I'm in a place where I'm not sure what the next step is, this sound comes back to me and I can hear it. And it causes me to pause and to allow my intuition to take over. And for me, that's a sound of peace. And that's what I associate peace with internally, is that vibration and that interior sound that I hear. A lot of people I've met don't have that sound, and so they create it. And this act of creating the peace is the same thing, only for other people it takes practice. But for me, because I've been practicing being really still and listening for a long time, that noise, that frequency, that vibration came to me naturally.
Yeah. In the tradition of mantra, I mean, we consider in the Indian tradition that all sound is coming from silence. Really, the heart of the sound is silence. Wow. So the way that we're working with mantra in Mantras for Peace project is really as a tool for interiorizing the mind, to go from outside to inside, to develop that like listening awareness. And but I love that it is a natural thing. You discovered that through your own necessity, I guess.
Yes.
And it sounds to me like that vibration of peace is like a friend, that it's a signature energy. Is it a signature energy that you recognize?
Like it's like a calming energy, and whenever I feel it, I feel like I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And that everything's going to be okay. And I just need to wait for my intuition to tell me what to do next.
Yeah.
And so it's I listen internally, and that sound is like the trigger.
Yeah. And when you hear that sound, then you know that you're in flow.
Yes, yeah, I know that I'm in flow. Like I can feel it. It's starting. I can start it to hear it in my ears right now.
Yeah.
So it's and yesterday during the speech, when I was getting ready and I was listening to I was really listening intently. I could hear it coming. So I knew my speech was going to be okay because it was going to be spirit led, and that frequency is an energy, and whenever we feel it or we make it, when we're creating energy, we're creating the flow.
So it's a dynamic conversation, like listening in for peace and then expressing when it's time, when we have that opportunity to share the voice. It's yeah. Well, just for our listeners, yesterday at the Yoga Shakti lecture series for the International Yoga Festival in Rishikesh, Cheryl just brought down the house with words of peace and forgiveness and truth that I'm just so thank you. I'm really honored and humbled that you're here and that you're so generous with your wisdom. And
I'm humbled by everybody else. I really am. I see everybody else, and I'm like so humbled, and I'm saying I'm so thankful to be here. And that's one of my daily things is always giving thanks, especially if things are getting really hard. I start disciplining myself to say, you need to be thankful for this. You need to start looking for all of the things that you need to be thankful for to get my mind re-tuned whenever something stressful has happened.
Yeah.
So I start giving thanks immediately anytime I can feel a crisis coming on. Even mentally, when the crisis is happening, internally I'm saying I need to be thankful for this and thankful for that, and to maintain the peace.
Wow.
Sure.
And can you tell us a little bit about your work? Because I think you, from what I understand, you deliberately put yourself into stressful and active resistance situations, and I'll put it in the terms of you're using your voice as a woman, as an elder, as a native person to act for peace.
Yes.
And can you tell us a little bit more about that?
First of all, I'm a water protector, and I travel many places to tell landowners and even renters, whoever's in the audience, that they need to be really conscious of the land that they're standing on, because they're standing on occupied indigenous territories. So that means that they need to recognize that land had an owner before before the 1400s, and that the land that they're in is part of a watershed, and that waters that flow through that watershed, they all have names. They all have ancestral names given to them by the people that lived there before the 1400s, and that this river is accustomed to hearing these songs, almost like these peace mantras, listening, and they give thanks for the river, and they recognize the river because the river's alive.
So each river has her own song.
The people who live there have a song for the river. So in all indigenous communities, people always go to the river and they're always singing there, and it's an offering, and that because they understand that everything is life. In my language, Mini Wichoni means water is life. And so I talk to landowners and I ask them to recognize they're on indigenous lands, they're occupying indigenous lands, and that the tribal people need to come back and have these ceremonies and reestablish that connection with those songs to the river to keep them healthy and to restore the balance, but also to remind the people who are living there that that water is alive and that it's being threatened by pipelines, by rights of ways from oil and gas industries and extraction with fracking. All of that is endangering the water. So they need to create these alliances, and that might be unconventional because these people aren't talking to each other. They're hardly even looking at each other. And that's what I was talking about yesterday, how people are afraid to look at me. And there are times, I'm sure, where you may have felt the same way, where people didn't want to look at you. But at any rate, the spaces, there comes a time when that water is literally going to become endangered, and you have to stand up and say, stop. And so in Standing Rock, in North Dakota, 2 years ago, that time came when the pipeline was being constructed under the Missouri River. Down from the Missouri River are 18 million people who use that water. So there was a spiritual camp set up, and there was a resistance to stop the pipeline from being built. So we were being confronted by militarized police forces, and they were shooting rubber bullets at us. And if you research Standing Rock, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But so when they were having these confrontations, I would go to the front line and I would bring ceremony with me, because I believe ceremony and activism go together, and that's how you maintain the peace. So I would be out there amidst a huge crisis situation where, you know, these people were really wanting to harm us, and they were brutalizing us, but thankfully, because the Creator and the prayers of all the people were with me, and I was able to maintain my peace, nothing bad happened to me, but I always stood in prayer, and I always gave thanks even to the people who were, you know, pointing their guns at me, because when you take off the uniforms and when you look just eye to eye, we're humans, we share the same water, we share the same watersheds, we stand on the same occupied territory, and we need to unite and create this unconventional alliance. And that's what I call an unconventional alliance, where people who don't normally have anything in common, they find the water as their commonality, and they stand up and together and to stop the destruction of the land and the contamination of the water. That's what I was referring to in these really these hard places to be.
I wonder, since you're aligned as a protector of the water, for those of us who live in places where the original protectors of the land are no more, or are not accessible, or we don't know, and I think that's the situation, unfortunately, in many parts all over the world. We're here in India, in noisy Rishikesh, but the Adivasis of Rishikesh, the original inhabitants of this land, they're long gone from this place, and yet, you know, here in India there's a tradition of connecting to the water as a goddess and praying to the water as a goddess. But for the people all over the world who might listen to this and hear your words, is there some way, like, for us to connect to the water in our area? Like, what would you recommend from a ceremonial point of view, or a connect to the water? How can we do that?
The water needs to hear its name again. It needs to remember that, actually it remembers everybody, but what it needs is that the original people who used to care for it and call it and sing it to it, they're all gone. It's not hard to reach out or look at in the internet and find out whose land you're occupying. It's really simple, actually, to find out whose land you're occupying, because they've usually been pushed to a perimeter, and they look like me. They look like me, or almost like me. But reestablishing that relationship, I think, is really important, and bring them back. Create a space for them near the river, and start the dialogue. Say, you know what, our river's in danger. I understand that your people on your occupied territory. Will you please come and have ceremony at the river? And can we join you and create a space, a protected space where we can all sing to the river together? Because that's what's needed. The people need to unify again, and the water's bringing everybody together because it needs to be protected. So I encourage you to reach out to whatever tribe whose lands you're occupying and ask them to have ceremony, have a water ceremony with them on the lands, because that restores the balance. That's how powerful the frequency of chanting is, because the water remembers
The water responds.
The water responds.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the water responds.
Just kind of painting a picture of the world that we want to see in the future. What would happen in your vision if we all worked together to create those ceremonial spaces for the water? What?
I think the truth would come out, and I think a lot of healing would come, because the water is our teacher, the water is our sustainer, and through actions, calling the tribal people to the land, back to the lands, restoring a place for them to have the ceremonies. The other thing I do is I talk to landowners and I encourage them to give an actual piece of the land back next to the river so they can have these ceremonies. And I've been successful. There have been, and I think there's more and more people who are saying, yes, I know that these are tribal lands because my great uncle told me that this is what he sees, and yeah, and the people live right over there, and maybe I'll drive over there and say, you know what, let's work together, and I want, you know, to offer you, the people, a place to have ceremony, and it works. So that's what I would like to see. I would like landowners inviting the tribes to come back to have the ceremonies and create a safe space where dialogue can be had and where the unity could be felt.
I have goosebumps all up and down.
Yes, maybe it's happening right now.
May it be so.
Yes.
May it be so.
Yes. Tankashila. That's what I pray for.
What is the word you said?
Tankashila?
Tankashila.
It's like the grandfathers. It's like your grandfathers and my grandfathers. It's like all of our grandfathers. I say, oh, grandfathers, hear that prayer. Grandfathers. Yes. Yeah, or we could say Unchi Maka, which is the grandmother earth. We say Unchi Maka, hear the words from your children.
She hears.
Yeah, she hears.
She hears. It's right now. It's totally raining.
Yeah.
We've had like thunder, and the water is following you around.
Yes, it's really funny. Where we go, people are saying it's not supposed to be raining, but when you show up, like the thunders come and the rains come.
Yeah.
I love the water, though. I love the water.
Yeah.
I'll spend the rest of my life protecting water, and I encourage you to start protecting your own water. Find out what watershed you live in. Find out what tribe you used to live there, where you're at, and do something. Do something that comes from the heart. Do whatever your heart tells you to do.
And can you tell people, is there a particular way that our listeners can support your work?
I travel quite a bit. I don't have a sponsor. I do have people who love me. I do have people who I meet that I inspire, that they inspire me with their work. They do give donations. I have a website called sacredearthactivism.net. So we're receiving an immediate blessing right now, and everything here is being cleansed with water. And there's this magic vibration you can hear.
There's a party going on here of awakening here in Rishikesh.
Yes, in Rishikesh. For those of you who don't know, I just learned that the Beatles used to come here all the time.
Yeah, they did.
And yeah, they have a recording studio really close.
Yeah.
somewhere that people visit all the time.
Yeah, we're gonna head up there in a few days.
Are you? Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
come on down.
Yes.
I can't thank you enough for taking your time to speak and to come all this way with your brothers and sisters.
Yes.
To share your incredible bravery. To me, it's like such incredible love.
It is incredible love.
It's incredible love to transform what has just been like a shit history.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you show up with this like grace and power and love, and I mean we are your students.
Well, I try not to talk unless someone asks me to talk, and the rest of the time I spend listening and I spend watching everything. So people have been my greatest teachers of every nation, of every culture, of every language. I can sit and literally my education happens right in front of me. So if you're in nature, nature teaches you everything. And even if you're in a crowd, you can still learn things just by watching the crowd and listening to the crowd. Yeah. And there's some incredible people
There really
that
are
are here. So we're in a magical place in Rishikesh, where I would say the best of the yogis are here, and they've all got something to say.
Yeah. But what I'm struck by is how deeply really we're talking about reconnecting to self, which is reconnecting to nature.
Yeah.
And the theme that I hear again and again is from the mystics and the elders is this returning to listening. Because for me, you know, my culture, I was born in the United States and I was raised in really unconscious American culture. I took in what I took in, and that's what my destiny was. But how disconnected to life that way of being is, and it took me coming. I got called through a series of mystical events to India, and I met my teacher, and I got immersed in this way of life. And it comes back down to listening. And the thing that we don't do in Western culture is listen.
Yeah.
We talk.
Yeah. So my elders told me the fastest way to learn is to not open your mouth. Yes. So I've kept my mouth shut for probably 50 years and did what in America what you're told to do. Go to school, raise your kids, make sure they're safe, keep them off the streets, keep them fed, try to keep them out of trouble, send them to school. I did everything that America told me to do, but it wasn't working for me and my family because the whole system's not set up for tribal people. It's not even set up for Americans. But people have bought into it. Our fathers and grandfathers have bought into this system. They think that it's working, but it's not working. So I need, and I encourage everybody, the planet actually needs people to reconnect to the earth and hear what's happening and see with their own eyes and witness the devastating acts against the planet caused by industrialization and capitalism and the patriarchy. It's all there. You just have to open up your eyes and see it.
And then talk about it.
Yes, and then talk about it to your neighbor, your sister, your cousin, your preacher, preachers were invited to come to the New York seminary a couple of years ago, preachers from all over the United States, and they talked about preaching, ministry in the time of climate change, because it's here. Climate change is here, and we need to be able to change our behavior and be conscious of every dollar we spend and every activity, whether it's, because when we purchase something, we have to do something with the packaging. And me, to do away with all the packaging stuff, I buy handmade stuff. Yeah. If it's handmade, then it will last forever. And if I'm never going to throw it away, I probably will pass it on to somebody else who likes it more than me. They'll say, oh my goodness, and I've had it and I've worn it, and I'm saying, okay, here, why don't you have it? Yeah. So conscious decisions about living sustainably and a healthy way so our environment isn't impacted the way it is now.
Well, maybe as a final question, if you don't mind,
yes.
You said you did what America told you to do for 50 years. What happened to get your voice out?
So what happened was I was depressed, I was suicidal, I was a victim of violence, and I thought I was going crazy because I didn't fit in. And the truth of the matter is I will never fit in, because the system is set up, the system isn't set up for me. And all these things that happened to me woke me up. Finally, I woke up and I said, okay, this system is not my system. The system that my ancestor came from is outside the system, so I need to leave the system. So I quit my job. I had worked my way to the top 10. And it took me 2 years, but I gave everything away and I became a minimalist, and I went home with a box, a basket, and a bag. And I decided if I was going to leave, I was going to leave the system that wasn't a part of me and really isn't a part of you either. And I was going to reconnect with the earth, and I was going to go back, and I was going to learn my traditions, learn my language, sing my songs, and I did. I went back, I learned ceremony, and I learned how to carry that ceremony with me. And I learned how to use those teachings to find the peace that the society doesn't really want you to have. They want you to be worried about your bills. They want you to be making loans. They want you to be borrowing money. They want you to be, going to an education system because they convince you don't have enough education, but you do. You literally can survive in a holistic manner, in a sustainable way, with a very small footprint without an education.
Yeah.
That's what happened. I went home.
Wow. And thank goodness.
Yeah.
And now look at you're radiant with with life, with spirit.
Yes.
You are now inspiring
and
many people, I'm sure.
And I had this feeling to go home, this calling to go home. I could feel it. But it wasn't until the thunders that you hear right now, if you can hear them, the thunders came one day. And I was looking at the TV, and the storm was coming directly to our community, and we were tracking it. You know how the radar is on the TV? Tracking it right to the town, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, we live under this huge old tree. And so I looked outside, and I could see the thunder cracking, the tree was going back and forth, and it's a huge tree, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, the tree's going to fall over. And it was because it was making these like groaning noises because the wind was so strong.
Wow.
And so I laid down I got on my hands and my knees because I was having an anxiety attack, and I could hear the thunders, and I said, oh my goodness, can you please save, because I literally had this doom. Like something horrible was going to happen. It was so intense. The thunders were so strong, I could feel the electricity. I got down on my hands and my knees and I prayed. And I said, please keep us safe. I'll do whatever you want me to do, and I'll go wherever you lead me. And then my daughter and I prayed and I waited because I couldn't even stand up. I was so overwhelmed with this this fear and this, because I knew something horrible was going to happen, and it was just terrible. And the storm came, and then my daughter came and she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, is the storm coming? And she said, "Oh no, it's split in two, and one's going north." One of them's going north and the other one's going south. So I said, and so I got up and I walked to the window and I peeked out and it was pouring rain, but the lightning had gone and the trees had stopped swaying back and forth.
It
literally
just divided from you.
Yes, it divided right before it came to the town. But it was like they were these waquitas. You can hear them, they're really loud. And they were really loud that night, so loud I could hear them internally. I could feel the vibration internally.
Yeah.
I could feel it.
It's a kind of sound healing.
Yes, it was like sound. So then I woke up the next day and I said, "Oh my goodness, I promised I would do whatever." And then I got up thinking that, and then I totally forgot it. We made lunch. It was a weekend. We're going to a company picnic. This is before I quit the company. Big, huge company picnic, and I was going to get all ready to go. And I peeked out the window, I looked at the time, I walked over to the door, and somebody came running up the steps to the door, and then they opened up the door, and then I was going to go out to the car, and then they wanted to visit. So I came in and they were going to visit my children and my daughter, and while we were standing there all visiting, it must have been like 30 seconds, not even 1 minute, there was this huge crack, and it was just like this immense growl out of it. Sounded like someone shot a gun, but it was a long blast of a gun, and we could like the earth shook, and we all ran to the windows to see what had happened. And the tree that I was worried about falling over, a huge branch broke, and it landed right on top of my car.
So it was like, don't forget your promise?
Yeah, so it was like, don't forget your promise.
You can't get away, you're not going to get away with flipping out of this
exactly.
one.
And the tree was so big, you couldn't even, it wasn't the whole tree. It was like this 80-foot limb.
Big branch.
A big limb had fallen. And it slid over the roof, and the tip of the tree hit the car. But the limb was long. It went through the whole yard and then the tip of the tree. And you couldn't even see my car. There was like a house here, this big, all this green, and then the next house. It was mad. So people were running from all over. They're saying, "Is anybody hurt?" And I was just in shock. I was thinking, "Oh my goodness, my car's going to be demolished." Oh, but yeah, I was lucky. So from then I said, "Okay, I remember. I'm going to go home." So I went home.
And then you got a different vehicle of your voice, your power is your subtle vehicle, and it takes you much farther than the car. Wow. Wow, that's amazing. And here we are in another storm.
Yes, here we are in another storm. So there's one thing that I was told when I went to Mexico. I went to Mexico to start protecting rivers down there. I got called to go to Mexico. Okay. So I went to Mexico, and by the way, it was 2 years ago. We were trying to save the Texcoco Lake, the last of the great 5 lakes in Mexico City, because there were 5. Now there was only that lake. After 2 years of protests and marching in the street with over 200 organizations, maybe 250 organizations, the lake is saved. But yeah, so I'm really happy about that. But I went to Mexico, and I was told there by an elder. She said, I told her my great-grandfather comes to Mexico. I'm not sure where, but from somewhere down here. So I'm returning. His bloodline is returning to Mexico. So they're really happy. They said, "Let me read your fortune." So she pulls out the codex, and she said, "Oh my goodness!" And she says, "Oh my!" And then she explains everything in Spanish. I have an interpreter telling me what she's saying, and she said, "Oh, you're a rainmaker." So I said, "Oh, gee, it's good to know." She said, "No, we called you because you can manipulate the rain. So if hail is coming down, you can change the hail into a gentle breeze so it doesn't destroy the crops. Wow. Or if it's really dry, you can call the rain, so all the plants are nourished. So I said, wow, I didn't know there was such a thing as a, actually she says a hail maker. She calls me, she said, you're double water, which is, it's usually something else. It's two
Water,
things,
fire,
but yeah,
yeah.
the duality. Mine is both water.
Well,
And here it's
and here we
pouring.
are. It's so fun.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it's not supposed to be raining here.
No.
Yeah. But,
Wow.
wow. I think the clouds are getting the chills even.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
Wow. Well, it's just absolutely a joy to talk with you and to breathe in your spirit and to see you really resonating in your power, and then having that be reflected here with Mother Nature is such a blessing. Thank
and
you.
also, there's some major chanting going on.
There's some good stuff happening here.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you. Thank you too.
Thank you.
Yes.